I got a fantastic question from Peter Ford on my Facebook group because yesterday I'll read his question out to me and I'll explain my answer to it. So yesterday I sold one of the best ultra wide angle lenses anyone can ever buy for a full frame camera. The Tamron where is it? Tamron 15 to 30 millimeter VC f2.8. Oh, stunning lens, massive. As you will see in my, I've done a video where I was unboxing it. It was huge. It was heavy. It had a big bulbous end, which made putting filters on the front a little bit of a challenge, or completely impossible. But optically, stunning. There's a good bit of focal breathing when you change the focusing area, but otherwise, just without doubt, one of possibly the best. Almost on par with the Nikon 14 to 24. However, it's got VC, vibration compensation. So if you're doing stuff which is static like what I do, and I do it handheld, the VC definitely came in handy. So I was able to shoot down at 15 millimeters, down to a fifth of a second photo, and still get sharp across the field images. Just really, really good. But I sold it. I sold it the other day to a fellow photographer in Edinburgh, and even though I got £620 for it, it was still a bit of a ooh, and it's also because I've not used it for about 6 months, 7 months, somewhere around about that. Pretty much, I unboxed it and then didn't use it. So anyway, here's my point. In my Facebook group, I said, sold my Tamron 15 to 30 VC lens. Only used it about 8 times, mostly testing it against the Panasonic 7 to 14 millimeter lens, which is this teeny tiny weeny little baby of a lens there. So the 7 to 14 on a micro four thirds sensor gives the same field of view as a 14 to 28 millimeter lens. It's an f4 though, so not so good. It's also got a bulbous end at the front, so you can't put filters on. So f4, it's not vibration compensation or vibration reduction or anything like that, so it doesn't have that either. But optically, nothing to complain about. Amazing. So yeah, I was mainly testing it against that. In the end, I've said here, it was too heavy. Talking about the Tamron 15 to 30 millimeter. It was too heavy, too big, and the quality difference was almost impossible to see. If you're able to shoot well and you're using external lighting and all that stuff, there's several times where I put full frame DSLR of multiple £1,000 with that massive Tamron lens side by side, the Panasonic GH4 and this tiny little f4 lens, and it's nearly impossible to tell which one took which photo. And there's a couple of times, certainly in low light situations, you can see there's a little bit more, like the tiniest amount of noise in the shadows in the Panasonic GH4 Micro Four Thirds system compared to a full frame Nikon D4. But to the point of the extra weight and carry and expense and insurance and all that stuff, it was just like, it wasn't worth that difference in image quality, which nobody out with the photography community would see. Only us as photographers, who are pixel peeping all the time, notice the difference. None of my clients have gone, your photos have changed, they're different, something. Nothing, that's not happened at all. So yeah, I just said the quality difference was almost impossible to see. The Tamron 1530 was an amazing lens and great value at under £700. But the full frame DSLR cameras that I have lost the advantage they used to have. So I'm not saying they don't have any advantage. They just have lost the advantage. The advantage. They used to be so much better. And in certain situations, they certainly are. But in what I use and what I shoot, they're not that useful. There's more drawbacks to it. Anyway, there's more drawbacks. So they might outweigh the undetectable image difference. So anyway, so that was my point. I was like, I'm now fully Micro Four Thirds system. I'm in it. I think it's great. And when I compare that to even an APS-C size Fuji S5, that's just such a heavy lump of a camera that this is just so much more dinky and everything. Anyway, so Peter Ford left a fantastic comment here. So here he says, as Tamron and Panasonic lenses, as Tamron and Panasonic, okay, hold on, a bit more beer. Okay, Peter Ford says, as Tamron and Panasonic lenses that your comparison test cost about the same, but one is full frame and the other is 4/3. I would say they're not exactly the same. The Tamron is going for about £900. Okay, it's definitely gone up in price thanks to Brexit. If we go for Panasonic 7-14, we're going, I think it's around about 550. Let's see, come on internet. Anything? Panasonic? 580, 780, 880. But okay, there's a bit of a difference, bit of a financial difference. But anyway, let's just, for the sake of shits and giggles, say that they're both the same price. So one is full frame and one is Micro Four Thirds, and see no difference. Is that just based on taking shots for shooting indoors, like your property shots, or is it this based on your professional opinion? You would do property, model, wedding, shoot, and see no difference. Okay, that's quite a lot of things. In terms of optical quality, in good lighting, no difference. I'm confident in saying that. Obviously, in weddings, you certainly have far more potentially challenging lighting conditions. Especially if you're shooting indoors of church or the party at the end, very little lighting and all that kind of stuff. And they're having maybe a full frame sensor that's got very high ISO capabilities would benefit over a Micro Four Thirds system. I would agree with that. Again, weddings is a super specialised... weddings I would consider to be like the ultimate in camera requirements. Like, people say, oh, so do you do weddings? I'm like, what, am I the ultimate photographer? To be able to do weddings and pull them off with ease is unbelievable. There's people who do like fashion photography and they're dealing with models and they end up just being the photographer when there's like a model agent, there's a hair, makeup, dress designer, location scout, managing director, blah blah, and then there's the photographer that's not what they do. See, at a wedding, the wedding photographer is the boss at a wedding in certain cases. So yeah, just if I was shooting weddings, definitely full frame would be what I'd be using for certainly the indoor shots. The Nikon D600, 610, 750, D810 would be the ones I'd go for. My own personal choice would be the D810, just because I know how good that is and how reliable that is. The amount of, I'm on a couple of forums on Facebook for Nikon D700, D750 users, and the amount of them just saying how their camera just bricks up every so often and they can't use it means that as a workhorse, wedding wise, I wouldn't recommend the D750. D810 seems to be bulletproof. So for, certainly indoor weddings, I would be using that. But generally, if I was a second shooter at a wedding, and you're getting shots of maybe more the candid shots, maybe the outdoor shots, the kind of stuff on the tables and the detail shots, then yeah, I'd happily go with Micro Four Thirds and happily do that wide angle lens for stuff like that as well. It's just full frame gives you that little bit more security when doing very challenging, changeable situations, which is what weddings can be. So anyway, that's what I say. Yeah, for modelling stuff, I'd happily do. I've just recently done a massive corporate head shoot, and that was all with the Panasonic GX8 and 15mm f2.8. In fact, this is what I was using for that. Granted, I had external flashes, had the Nikon flash, triggering off a couple of external slave Nikon flashes, all in manual mode and all that stuff. But yeah, it worked an absolute treat, and it looked cool. And I was like, that's a cool little camera. So it got a little bit of kudos instead of just the normal big brick that I got there. And when they saw the photos, they're like, that's really cool. Okay, so then Peter says, and lastly, how long do you think it'll be before public would say, yeah, shoot my wedding with the little stuff Micro Four Thirds? As you said once, people still look at the size of your gear as a status of your professionalism. Oh, boom! You are right. You are right. And many photographers are like, that's not right. You should be judged on the quality of your photos. You're like, that's right. A lot of people should be judged on the quality of their images. But I would say about 90% of your potential customers can't tell the difference between a good and a bad photo, but they can see a big camera and a small camera, and they think a big camera would have spent. It also shows to a potential customer, oh, this person has invested a lot of money into his camera gear, or clearly making enough money to buy this big camera, therefore he must be professional, therefore he must be really good. So I would say that rocking up to a wedding with only these, you're going to get some stares. There is, again, it's wrong to say, but if you're there and Uncle Bob is there with his Nikon D5 and you're there with your Panasonic GX8 or GX7 or G7, there is definitely going to be a case of, hold on a minute, how come my Uncle Bob, who's a postman, has a £5,000 camera and a £2,000 lens, meanwhile our photographer, who we're paying £2,000 to be here, is rocking up with cameras and lenses which are in total under £1,000 or £2,000 or something like that. Then yeah, there's definitely a question of hold on, what equipment are you using for my wedding shoot? It's a bit like somebody saying, hi, I want a race car driver to drive me for an awesome trip around the Highlands or something like that. Yeah, and he rocks up in a Volkswagen Beetle. You're like, oh, so you're a race driver, but you're here with a Beetle. He's like, yeah, but it's got an amazing engine and we can have a great trip. Like, yeah, I was really hoping to be like in a Ferrari. That's kind of what I was looking for. So yeah, I think that there is still a case of so the question is when will that happen? I don't know if it will, partly because I don't think the general customer base, client base, is as clued up to think that it's not just about the gear, it's about how well the person is able to take the photos. So yeah, I don't know if it ever will, but certainly if I was at a wedding, I would definitely have the big camera around my neck, but for ease of use, I'd probably, because having 2, possibly 3 cameras, because you don't necessarily always want to be changing lenses all the time, so you can effectively have 2 of these hanging down one side, and then your big digital SLR here with your big lens here for like your main kind of portrait shots, but then for everything else, boom, you got your little one. It just makes things so much lighter and easier. So I think you probably still need to have one big one. Innuendo bingo. Okay. So he says, as you said once, people still look at the size of the gear as a status of your professionalism. I agree. If I was a customer and you brought your work and your big arse lens and camera, and I gave you a job, then on the day you turned up with a little Micro Four Thirds, I'd, as a customer, would not be happy. And I'm in the same situation as well. I would be like, if it was my wedding and somebody rocked up with that, I'd be like, hold on, I don't think you've got the right equipment for a wedding. However, if they're coming along as wedding videographers and they rocked up with a whole pile of Panasonic GH4s, I'd be like, you're wedding videographers. So yeah, it's an odd one. So question is, how long before Micro Four Thirds is expected as a professional gear in public eyes? How long? Well, in video stuff, I would say it pretty much is. And again, a lot of the time in public eyes, it's about the additional gear that you've got as well. So if you're doing like a corporate head shoot, as long as you've got umbrella, flash, reflector, all that kind of stuff, you're like, wow, this is a thing going on. Wow, it doesn't really matter exactly what camera they've got for that, especially with corporate headshots. They're fairly easy to do once you've set it all up. That you don't need a camera that can do 15 frames a second and has 9 million autofocus points and 5 billion dynamic range levels and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it's different for different photography jobs, but for weddings you're always going to need big gear. Always going to need big gear. I think, yeah. It's because, again, even with a wedding, it might end up starting pouring with rain and yeah, nah. But if it's a wedding and it's a video, somebody's having a video coverage of their wedding, if they rocked up with Micro Four Thirds systems, I'd be like, respect, done. Yeah, absolutely, that's what you need. As long as it's got good lenses. You know, if they're coming along with kit lenses, I'd be like, that's not quite going to do it. But that's me as a photographer. The general public... Tough one. What do you think, everyone else that's watching this? I personally think that the general public, if they know you're doing video work, will respect stuff like the GH4. But if you're doing camera work, there is an expectation for you to have a camera which is bigger than what Uncle Bob brings along as a guest to the wedding for a long time in the future. That's for sure. Let me know what you think. That's my answer, Peter. I hope that kind of answers it. But I think we're at least... Size matters. Size still matters, especially when you're dealing with people that don't really know about photography. I'm trying to think of any other situations where we can have an analogous example. It's like asking a guy to dig a hole and he comes along with a small spade. He can still dig the hole really fast, but you would expect him to come along with a digger? I don't know. Something along those lines. Maybe some of you guys can think of some better examples on that. But yeah, it's going to be a long time. Cheers. Bye-bye.